All right. Good morning or afternoon to 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. All right, today's September 30th. It's our fourth week of virtual Wednesday learning for computer and technology class. And this video is going to show you or talk about pretty much every single part and every single thing that you need to do today. First, I'm going to pull up what's going to be kind of our finished product for a project that we're going to be working on. Now, I'm going to say a couple of other things first, but what you see here is like a finished product of something that we're going to do in Google Docs, and it's going to be in this class today for a part one, and then finished up next week in a part two. All right, we're going to be doing that. Before we get to starting it, though, I want to remind you that for everybody in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we should be logging in and doing this typing website at the very minimum once a week. During this time today, you have time available during our computer and technology class that if you went on and spent 15 minutes or so, you should definitely be able to do that. Now, my advice is that if you do have extra time throughout the week, if you could get on this 2, 3, 4 times a week and spend a little bit of time, it's not something that you'd want to sit and play for 5 hours a day. I know that. But if you do get time to put in a little extra time, that is wonderful. Also, for 5th and 6th grade, you also have Extra Math and Raz Kids. Now, they're linked more towards your math and language arts class, even though I manage them, but I just am going to mention them from time to time and bring them up, that you should be also doing those. Extra Math, they advise you do it once a day. Raz Kids, it's great to go on there and have that digital library available, and hopefully your language arts teacher can mention how much she'd like you to see you do that. But that is something that's available that you should, I would say, at least once a week be going on, doing a little practice, taking a look at. But we don't need any of those anymore. Those are just reminders, and I won't be saying them every week, but they're just reminders. Also, I'm going to mention that one thing I would like you guys to watch, and maybe some of you are familiar, but maybe some of you aren't, is my video this week on taking screenshots on a Chromebook. It's going to be linked to this assignment right here. It starts off on YouTube looking like this, and it's very useful. You may even wind up using it today. In this technology information section from our website, I have put a lot of the videos that I've assigned so far this year, not every single one, but a lot of them that give you tips on Google, working in Chrome, Chromebooks, fixing problems or errors that may come about, and those types of different things. So, that is all to kind of just set up the class for different things that you should do. So please take the time to make sure you do. Everything is linked in the assignment here in Google Classroom. So now we're going to move on to what we are actually going to be doing today and starting that project. And for that, I'm going to sign out of my teacher account and I'm going to sign into a student account just like you guys. And we are going to start something from scratch. And now that I'm signed in, I am actually going to go make a Google Doc from scratch. So over in my app browser, I want to go to Docs. Not the only way to start a new Google Doc, but for this assignment, for these purposes, that's what we can do. And we're going to start with a blank document. And we are going to try to add some elements. We are going to try to add a lot of different features. And we're going to make a finished product, something that you could potentially print out, something that I could potentially print out, potentially put on the website, or hang in the school itself. But this is a finished document, and really the skills that I try to teach you guys in computer class are great for computer class, but also to be very useful for if you need to make something, create something in language arts and social studies, science, math. So we have our document. Let's give it a title to start off, and let's call this Quote Assignment. Now, I'm going to be trying to model good spelling, good punctuation, good capitalization. So since this is the title of my assignment, I'm giving it a capital letter Q, capital letter A, and I am ready to start. Now the first thing that we want to do is for this week, we are going to be working almost entirely in this Google Doc in what is called the drawing feature. So, to make this a little more clear, Google has its own app for drawings, right? Where you can go on and you can use a variety of their tools to incorporate different things. It's also built right into Google Docs. Just to show you, you're not doing this yourself, but if I went to Google Drawing, and I could go here and just work on a new drawing and combine different elements of pictures, shapes, colors, size, text, charts, a lot of different things. So that's its own app by itself, but it is built right into a lot of Google's other apps. So we're going to be working with it from right within Google Docs. Before we do that, let's set up two other sites. Now, you can get here a variety of ways. The way you're going to see me get to them is that I am simply going to type in their address. And I'm going to first get to Brainy Quote. And I said I was going to type in the address. I actually did a Google search because I know the name of that site, Brainy Quote. So I did a Google search. It's the first result, and I clicked there. And for the second one, I want to go to biography.com. And there I just typed in the address directly. So I have these different tabs open. For the rest of this class, maybe for next class too, here's how it would probably look the best for you. If you put this video in one window, and we learned how to take tabs out of windows last week to make them their own separate window. If you put this video in one window, split your screen, so say that was on the left, and then on the right, have these three tabs: Google Docs, this website Brainy Quote, and this website Biography. If you have those three tabs ready, they're going to be what we need to use to work on this assignment today. All right, so we are first going to put in a Google drawing, like I mentioned. So I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to go down to Drawing, and I'm going to do New. If I had created a drawing before, used that standalone Google Drawing app, I could have made one and saved it, but I didn't. I don't have it ready. I'm doing it from scratch right now. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to add a rectangular shape. And we want that rectangular shape to be more horizontal or in more of a landscape design. And I'll show you what I mean by that. When I go to Shapes, from this button here and then Shapes, pretty much anything on the top row is going to work. I could point to a few others that could work for this that are not in the top row, but to keep it simple, the top row of shapes would work. The lightning bolt, the heart, the happy face, the circle, and many others are not going to work well for what we want to do. But if you pick pretty much any one of these, I'm going to pick, say, this one here, the last one. You're ready. And when I say draw it in a more horizontal or landscape design, that means make it more wide than it is tall. See, what I'm doing right now is I'm making that shape more tall than it is wide, or more vertical, or more in kind of a portrait mode. I don't really want it to look like that for the purposes of what we're going to do, so I want to draw it in more of a landscape mode. Now, since I did it this way, I can go and adjust it. And I can move my corners, move my handles rather, to make it the size that I want. And I'm happy with it right about there. You'll notice I didn't say make it exactly this size, exactly this number, exactly this length, because as you'll see in a couple minutes, we can change a lot of those things later. You just want it to basically look like a rectangular shape in a landscape view, about the dimensions of, say, a dollar bill or an index card, right? Anything around there will work fine, and it can all be adjusted later. Now, if you remember my sample, we're going to have a couple of things on here. We're going to have a couple of elements. Here is where you might want to pause this video after I'm done speaking and go do a little investigation, go do a little research, go do a little looking at these two websites, because here's what we need. We need a historical or sports or important person in politics, someone, type of person from biography. Now, there are probably thousands and thousands of people on this website. There's different ways to find them. I could kind of just scroll through and look at a couple of their featured um, uh, biographies that they have, their figures, and I might find one that I want to use. Here's a Tom Brady, right? And for a sports fan, if you are a fan of Tom Brady, he is right here featured on the homepage. Maybe you say, that's great. I love Tom Brady. That's what I want to use right there. Or maybe Steve Jobs. Maybe you are into technology and you like Apple and you know that name Steve Jobs, so you find somebody right away. But if not, it's okay. Because what you can do is also you can look through these different categories. I will say right now that anything that we do for my class at all during the week, my class at all for the year, or particularly this assignment, has to be appropriate. Now, I'm not going to say who, but I know that there's a couple people on this biography site who are very notorious or regarded as kind of infamous negative figures from history. They are on there. I would prefer you didn't use them. In this quote site that we're going to use in a minute, there's probably 100,000, 500,000, a million great quotes. Could you find some inappropriate ones if you tried? Yes. And I know all this, but this is something for school. This is something we're doing that your parents should be able to see. I should be able to see. The principals should be able to see. So we're being appropriate. So your job right now is to find someone. And for my example, I did a search. So you could go and look by these categories. Let's just say we said history and culture. We clicked on that category, and we see a couple featured people, featured historical events. What you can also do is search. If you have an idea of, say, a famous president like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, say it was a sports figure like someone from the past, like Mickey Mantle or a Darryl Strawberry or Larry Bird, right? You think about it, and whether it's somebody from history, somebody from sports, somebody who's a celebrity, Marilyn Monroe, or another famous person, you can type in a search, and you'll see that I've already done this, so it saved a few of my searches where I'm using Albert Einstein for my example. So I'm going to search for that person, and I'm going to click on their person profile. You may also see, and in these little red boxes, it'll tell you there's some specific videos on Albert Einstein. It may give me some different other topics that Albert Einstein is related to, but I'm going to click on his person profile for Albert Einstein. And now it's going to give me tons of information, the proper spelling of his name, the years that he or she was alive, or if there is not anything in the second number, they may still be alive. It's going to give me a little bit about who they were, what they did, what's notable, quick facts, and you could skim through these pages and find tons and tons of information. But what I also want to do is I want to combine that with a quote by that person. And this is where it might take you a couple tries. You might get it on the first try. You might say Wayne Gretzky is your person you want to do. He's on biography.com. And Wayne Gretzky has a great quote on Brainy Quote. Done. Or you might have to look a couple different times and go back and forth in order to find a combination that you like. So now on Brainy Quote, I want to find a quote by my figure, whether that's a historical figure, celebrity, someone from sports. So I am going to go and do a search for Einstein, and I see there are tons. There are dozens. It may even go into more and more pages, and I want to find a quote that I like by Albert Einstein. Now, these quotes, they should be something interesting, something thoughtful, something that you like, something that is positive. I hope that you find something like that. Can you find things on here that are kind of just funny? Yes, and sometimes they can be okay. Sometimes they can be a little bit inappropriate, and we want to stay away from that. From 5th to 8th graders, I think that you guys should have a sense of what is appropriate, what is not. But I'm going to look and just for the quick example, use this one. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them by Albert Einstein. And now is the time where I want to add a few of those components into my drawing in Google Draw, which is within Google Docs. So in the previous video that I mentioned to watch about adding pictures to Google Docs last week, about doing screen captures or screen snips, you have several different ways. There's probably an easy 5 or 6 different ways to get a picture into here. I could go to this picture right here from Albert Einstein. I could do a search for Albert Einstein and find a picture, or the way that I'm going to do it to make it simple, which I believe should work for the majority of you, is right within Google Draw. I'm going to click on Image, and it's going to come up with this box where I'm going to do a search. And within this search, I'm going to type in Albert Einstein. And I'm going to see the results it comes up with, and there's going to be quite a few. I want to pick the one that makes the most sense for what I'm doing, and for this section, for what we're doing right now, because we're actually going to add 2 pictures, I would want it to be pretty much a classic portrait or something of their image. I wouldn't really want to use something that is kind of like this right here, which is a pop culture picture of Einstein, or something that's like a cartoon so much, or something that's a statue, unless your person was so old that from so long ago that they had to have a statue. But I like this simple one right here. I'm going to select it, and it's going to add it to my Google Draw. What you'll notice in Google Draw is different than working in regular Google Docs is I can stack things on top of each other. If I was in a Google Doc and I added a picture and then a shape and then text, they all have to stay separate. They can't go on top of each other, right? But because I'm doing this in a Google Drawing, which is one really good reason to use it, everything can be stacked on top of each other to make a really nice little display or finished product that we're going for. So I put Albert Einstein. How many components do I have here already in my Google Draw? Think about it to yourself and see if you can come up with it. I have 1, that was the shape, 2, that is the picture. I'm about to add in a 3rd. I'm about to add in text. So I want the text box right here, and I want to draw text on top of the picture, on top of Einstein's picture right here. Right? And for this picture, it makes sense that it's in the lower section. You have to look at your picture and how it's made and see where the text would fit best, but all I'm going to add is Albert Einstein, and then the dates that he was born and the dates that he died. So I'm going to add in 1879 to 1955. Now, you'll notice I can't see that yet. I could have predicted that, and I could have changed my font color to start, and then I would have seen my typing a little better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all my typing and then change the font color after. And here's my text color tools. We have all of those tools available up top. We talked about these 3 little dots if your window is not big enough to show everything. And now I want to make that text pleasing looking, right? Something that looks nice for the picture, doesn't look like I just did quick work. So what I'm going to do is center it with my More tools again, this align box right here, and centered. I'm also going to change the font around, but just a little bit, and this is where you have to get a feeling of fonts that are appropriate for certain situations. So for instance, for Albert Einstein, I'm probably not going to want to use my cherry cream soda, my silly looking font. If this person was maybe like a cartoonist, or a pop culture artist, or a comedian, maybe that would be okay, but this is Einstein. This is one of the world's most well-known physicists and mathematicians. So I want to use a font that I feel like fits him a little bit better, something that's maybe a little more formal, a little more standard looking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the font for his name. I already made everything white. I'm going to make it a little bigger, and this is where you have to be the judge, because your font, you can't necessarily just say you're going to use the exact size that I used. You might need to adjust yours a little differently depending on how it looks in the picture, but you want to try to make your finished product look about like mine right there, where you have the picture of the person, you have their name all spelled correctly, capitalized correctly, and the dates they lived and died between. So their birth date, their death date. If they have not died yet, they're still alive, you would just leave it blank after that dash. And then we're going to do one more thing to Einstein's picture. So remember now, we have three elements. We have the background shape, we have the picture of Einstein, and we have this text box. I'm going to click back on the picture of Einstein, and I want to go ahead and I want to give that a border. For Einstein, I'm going to give him a bit of a green border. I'm going to make it just a little thicker, and these are all tools that we have discussed previously, and I'm going to make this a combination of dashed and dotted, and I think that's good. I like it. I may choose to make that thickness a little bit wider, the point size a little bit wider, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now that I know what color my picture is, if my picture is black and white, if I have another color picture, now I can also think about the color of this shape and how it's working together. Because if I had this be a lot of blue, I might not want my background blue. If I had this as a picture that had black and white, I could use a lot of different choices. It's really a matter of you trying to make it look the best, the most pleasing that you can by combining colors. And what I like to do is I like to either use colors that complement each other or kind of colors in a similar theme. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So within the picture, they're all shades of black, white, and gray. I did a green around the border. Now, instead of this blue shape right here, I'm going to change it so that the shape's fill color is a gradient that's a shade of green, right? And the outline border, it's actually black. I could leave it black. That wouldn't be bad. Or I might make it the same green. I might try to match the same green that I have around Einstein as around my outside border. I'm going to make that outside border a little bit thicker. I like that, and I am going to thicken up and match that color for the border around Einstein himself. And with just a few little adjustments, and I'm not telling everybody you have to use this exact border size, you have to use this exact color, because some of this is personal choice. Some of this is how it looks with your project, with your design. And then, last but not least, I want to add in my quote, and I might have to check back in my tabs because I remembered what my quote was about, but I didn't remember the exact quote. So I have to look back, and it says, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." So now I want to go back here, add in another text box to the right about there, and I want to check back to make sure I'm going to say this correctly. I'm going to type it. Some of you might be thinking, "Oh, Mr. Henderson, you could copy and paste." Sure. Yes, that is possible. I could copy and paste, but I am going to type it out, make sure it is all capitalized, and also put quotes around it. So it says, "We cannot solve our problems with," quote, "we cannot solve our problems with." And if you've ever heard a teacher say chunk it out, like when you were learning reading and practicing reading, I'm chunking out this quote so I get it right. "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And end quote. Right? I put quotes around it, that punctuation mark, which is a shift, and then same button as the apostrophe that's right next to the enter key, to put quotes around that, saying that that is not my own, that is Albert Einstein's words. And now, our last step for today is to make this a kind of finished part of our project. We're not even finished the whole project. That'll be next week. We want to adjust some fonts and sizes. So this was Einstein's quote. Again, I could go to more fonts. I could look around. I don't want to pick something that would be silly, like Comic Sans. Oh man, Comic Sans. Very well-known font. That would be great if somebody was, again, talking about a cartoon, if it was the creator of The Simpsons or something. That would be fine. I would say okay if they were saying something silly, But again, this is Einstein. I want to think about how it fits. If you have George Washington and a quote by George Washington, you probably wouldn't want to use a like silly comic looking font. The font gives you a feeling. It gives you a feeling of how that information is conveyed, and I'm going to pick this one called Oswald. I also want to fill up this space a lot more. I don't want to just leave it like that because that looks like poor design where I have just a bunch of blank space with nothing in it. So I'm going to increase that font size and do kind of a guess and check. See, 36 was a little too big. 30, I think, is about just right. And my last choice is, do I want to leave that font the same color or change it? Well, I could leave it. I'm going to leave mine, it's black. If you wanted to change yours, you could. My only advice or rule or something that I know 5th to 8th grade has heard me say before is to make it readable, to make it so that when somebody looks at this, they don't have to strain their eyes, they don't have to say, well, wait a minute, this section of a word blends in with the background, this is a yellow on top of yellow, and it's hard to read. Make it very readable. So you can see by my color choices, by my size, everything is totally readable, good design. And with that, I'm going to be finished this section right here, which I combined. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4 elements on top of each other and arranged in a really nice way to make my drawing that now gets, when I press save and close, inserted into my Google Doc. All right, that was part 1. You do not have to submit this today, okay? So, you have questions, you have anything you need, you can say them in the comments, you can message me, but you do not have to submit this today because next week we are going to change a couple other settings, do a couple other features, add a couple other things, and we are going to finish this Google Doc to make it a final product. For right now, you know that as long as you're connected to the internet, you name this quote assignment and it will save on its own, so you can exit out and be finished for today.